Huh? All right. We are probably not going to get to the very last part, but let's finish this unit circle part. What are all the radian measures of all the angles whose cosine is blah, blah, blah? Okay, same question as before. Cosine of what is negative square root 2 over 2? Okay, let's all student take calculus. Which two quadrants will make cosine negative? 2 and 3, correct. 2 and 3. Okay, so the angles are here. Now, you're not going to use your calculator. You're going to think. Think about this. On your unit circle, that kind of have a mental thing of your unit circle. Which angles will give cosine a negative square root 2 over 2? So which angles give the x direction a negative square root 2 over 2? 135 and 225, correct. However, radian. 3 pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4, correct. All angles. So we need to do what?
Plus 2 pi n.
Plus 2 pi n. Okay, so when they give you special lengths like that, you should just think about unit circle instead of using use the calculator. Okay, so you gotta have that mental unit circle in your mind so you can do this. Wow. Okay, next.
Wait, how do you know it's quadrant 2 and 3?
All students to calculus, so anything that does not have a positive for cosine. Okay, so everything is positive. Sine is positive, that means everything else. Okay. All right, next one. Let's try another one. What are all the degree measures of angles just within 0 to 2 pi whose sine is negative 1/2? So sine of what is negative 1/2? All right, all students take calculus. Which two quadrants? Oh, Stephen, you're too fast for today. Okay, so wait 5 seconds before you say something. Okay, 3 and 4. All right. Okay, think about it. Which two angles makes y direction negative 1/2? 5 seconds. Which, but in degrees. In degrees. 210. 210. And not 340. There's no 340. Very close. Yeah, 330. And they want from 0 to 2 pi, so that's it. So they're not saying all angles. They said just between 0 to 360. So that's it. If it is, you add 360 in. If it says all angles, add 360 in.
Wait, so it'd be here and here. And then you just find what it is in degrees?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, that's all we have time for today. I'm going to change your homework a little bit because you probably won't be able to solve those equations. Just work on these. Okay, so we started learning how to solve a trig equation where you only have a sine, cosine, or tangent on one side, and then you have a number on the other side, and you just have to find x. Okay, we're going to change some of the harder equations. They're going to be something you have to solve as well, but then you want to get it down to something like this so then you can figure out the angles. So kind of like what we did in chapter 5 with factoring. Okay, so we're kind of like trying to find the roots kind of thing. All right, so let's look at this first question. 4 cosine theta minus 1 equals cosine theta. What does your math sense tell you have to do first? Get rid of the cosine theta. How? Move what? Okay, so maybe subtract cosine theta. 4 cosine theta minus cosine theta is what? 3 cosine theta. Okay, so just think cosine theta is a variable. So it's 4x minus 1 equals x. We've got to solve for x. Okay, so this is like 4x minus 1 equals x. Except now you have cosine, so you have to do one more step or it looks scary, but it is just that. Okay, so 3 cosine theta minus 1 equals 0. Okay, now what? Okay, add 1 to both sides. 3 cosine theta equals 1. Divide by 3, cosine theta equals 1/3. All right, this now looks just like all the problems that we've been doing. Okay? All right, so this is all student take calculus again. All right, I'm going to give you maybe a minute. Go ahead and solve it. The question says, find the answer within 0 to 2 pi. So that means first, only within one circle. Second, they want it in radian. If they want us in degrees, they would put 0 to 360 degrees. If they put 2 pi, that means radian. Okay, so figure out what the answer is. Let me know so I can check. Okay, so the angle is 1.23, and some of you put 2 pi minus 1.23, which is correct. I just put 5.05, and all of them are in radian. Okay, there is no plus 2 pi and because they just want it between 0 to 2 pi. You gotta read the question. Okay, and then 0 to 2 pi again means I want this in radian, not degrees. Okay, let's try another one. This one's very easy. I'm gonna kind of skip it. Well, let's just talk about it and then see how you would solve it. So how would you solve this problem? It's pretty much just like, subtract sine. Okay, so 2 sine theta plus 1 equals 0. And then what would you do? Minus 1, so 2 sine theta equals minus 1. And then what? Divide by 2 sine theta equals minus 1/2. Now, minus 1/2 is a special number, which means you should use your knowledge of unit circle to find it. Okay? All right. This one, so I'm going to leave it there and not solve it because I'm sure you can do this. Let's do a harder one. This one. All right. When you see something like this, please don't be scared. This means 2xy plus y equals 0. So how would you solve something like that? Take y out, right? So then in this case where we have cosine and sine, what would you take out? Sine. Okay, so we're going to factor out sine. Okay, so if you see... Bless you. If you see something like this and you are a little bit scared, you can change everything to x and y and then kind of go from there and then ask yourself logically, what would I do? Okay, so I would take out y, so then it's like this, right? We're trying to solve, so remember in chapter 5 when we're trying to factor and solve for the variable, first thing is you have to make sure it's equal to 0. Second thing, you make each factor equal to 0. So in this case, you would make y equal to 0 and then 2x plus 1 equal to 0, correct? Okay, so now in this case with the sine and cosine, what would you do to solve it? What would you make equal to 0? Sine theta. Sine theta. Sine theta equal to 0. Someone besides Stephen. How about here? So what else? You had to make the factors equal to 0. Factors means whatever multiplies together. 2 cosine theta plus 1. All right, so sine 0 equals theta is already, we can figure out what that answer is. 2 cosine theta plus 1, what should we do? Subtract 1 and then? Okay, so cosine theta is equal to -1/2. All right, so now go ahead and solve it. So remember that each factor has to equal 0. Okay, so this is the case where a times b is equal to 0, then a must equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. Okay, so each factor has to equal 0. Okay, so now you have two equations you have to solve. Sine of what is equal to 0, cosine of what is equal to -1/2. Please use your unit circle. Okay, use your unit circle, don't use calculator. And your angles are within 0 to 2 pi, and this is in radian. Okay, let me know when you're done. Okay, sine of what is equal to 0. So let's think about your unit circle. What makes sine? So sine is y, right? So what makes it stop right here? That's where y is 0. So what angles makes sine 0? Meaning there's no y. 2 pi and pi, or let's just say 0 and pi. Okay, 2 pi is the same as 0, right? 0 or 2 pi, it stops at the same place. All right, what makes cosine -1/2? Meaning, what makes x -1/2? So what makes x -1/2? This little thing. 2 pi over 3. And then one more. 4 pi over 3. Yeah, so if you have not memorized your unit circle, please make sure you make it like a priority when you go home. Memorize it. All right, 4 angles. Let's do a little harder one. Solve this for all angles. Okay, so some of you are not really sure how to even start. Okay, so if this is very confusing for you for now, let's just make x equals sine, y equals cotangent. I don't really prefer this way because I want you guys just to go ahead and solve it. But if you are having trouble right now, you can do it this way first. Okay, let's just solve it with x and y and don't think about sine and cotangent. Okay, so if you were to solve this problem, what would you do? Take out x. Y squared minus 3 equals 0. What's next? Make them equal to 0. Perfect. X equals 0. Y squared minus 3 equals 0. Then what? Okay, y squared equals to 3. Good. And then? Square root. Okay, now when you square root, you have what? Plus minus. Good. Make sure you have plus minus. All right, at this point, you can substitute back. You know that x is sine, y is cotangent. Okay, so we can say that sine is 0, and then cotangent is plus minus square root 3. Again, this is not my preferred method, but if you're having a lot of trouble, you cannot even continue, do this first. But by the end of this chapter, I hope you don't do this anymore because this is too slow. Okay, so at this point, let's solve. So sine equals 0, we just did it on the last problem, so you can look at your answer. Cotangent equals plus minus square root 3. Okay, so I hope you remember that chart I had you guys fill out. There was that sine, cosine, and tangent. This one's a cotangent, so then you're going to have to flip over tangent to figure out what angle works. Okay, or if you cannot remember it, what I usually do is I change cotangent to cosine and sine, and then I ask myself, cosine over sine, which angle is going to give me a square root 3 over 2? And then I think in my head, how am I going to match up the lengths so that when I divide them, I get a square root 3? Okay, somehow if I want to get a square root 3, it has to be a 1/2 and square root 3 over 2 pair, right? So which one has to be on the top for this to be a square root 3? 1/2 on the top or square root 3 over 2 on the top? Square root 3 over 2. So I know this has to be square root 3 over 2 over 1/2. So cosine has to be square root 3 over 2, and then sine has to be 1/2. So think about about your angles. Which one will give cosine a square root 3 over 2 and sine automatically becomes 1/2? What is this? Oh, okay, this one doesn't say. Okay, let's do 30. So cosine is square root 3 over 2. Sine is 1/2. Okay, well, there's another place for a positive number, right? What's another place for a positive cosine and sine? Or it turns out to be both positive. I don't think I'm explaining this very well. Okay, so the ratio turns out to be both positive and negative, right? So somehow when I take cosine divided by sine, I'm going to get a positive number. So one choice is both of them are positive. What's another choice that will end up being negative? Both of them are negative. So where is both of them negative? 1, 2, 3, 4? Third quadrant. All right, so in the third quadrant, what's going to make sine square root 3 over 2 and then cosine square root 3 over 2 and then sine 1/2? 7 pi over 6. Let's keep it consistent. Are we going to use degrees or radian? Radian? Okay, so then we have pi over 6 and then 7 pi over 6. Okay, so that is done with the positive. Now we're going to do the negative. Negative means one of them is negative, one of them is positive. Okay, it's going to be the other two. Right? Okay, so what's the angle that gives that ratio in second quadrant? Okay, good. 5 pi over 6. And then in the fourth quadrant? Okay, 11 pi over 6. So we have 4 answers from here. And then we had 2 from sine theta equals 0. So sine theta equals 0, we said was 0 pi from the previous problem. And then we have 4 here, pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and then 11 pi over 6. And let's look at the question. All angles. So we got to add 2 pi n on everything. Okay, n is equal to integer. Any questions? This is probably this is pretty complicated, but it's doable. Oh, okay. Let me help you with the next one then. Yeah. Okay, any questions on this one? This is pretty complicated. Which part are you stuck on? Like if I give this problem to you, will you be able to do it? Yeah? Without, oh yeah, that's what Viola was saying. Yeah, I'll help you with the next one without x and y. Yeah. This one is very easy, so I'm just going to ask you how you would do it. What would you do first? Someone besides that side? How about you guys here? What would you do first? Okay, add square root 2, good. And then what's next? Divide square root 2. Okay, so it became really easy. Cosine is equal to 1. And then just solve that. All right, let's do one last one. Find the x-intercept of the graph. Find the x-intercept. What does it mean by x-intercept? X-intercept is when what happens? Y equals 0. So they're just saying make this equal to 0 and solve. Okay, talk to your partner. What would you do first? You gotta try something. Talk to your partner. What would you do first? What did you guys say is the first thing to do? Yep, factor out sine squared. Good. 2 sine squared minus 1 equals 0. What's next? Perfect. Sine squared equals 0. 2 sine squared minus 1 equals 0. All right, sine squared equals 0 is just sine equals 0. We can just ignore that. How do we solve this one on the right? There's some people in the middle. What should we do? What's the first step? 2 sine squared minus 1 equals 0. Add 1, good. 2 sine squared equals 1. People in the middle, let's help me here. What should I do next? Okay, good. Divide by 2. Sine squared equals 1/2. What's the next thing I do? Square root. Now, when you square root, you have plus minus. All right, so this is where you need to rationalize it. If you want to try to see, is this in my unit circle? You have to rationalize. Okay, let's kind of split it into 2. So square root 1/2 and then minus square root 1/2. Square root 1/2 becomes square root 1 over square root 2. Okay, I'm just kind of making sure you guys remember what happened from first semester. Square root 1 is 1, so it's 1 over square root 2. Now, how do I rationalize this denominator? Okay, multiply by square root 2 over square root 2. So this is square root 2 over 2. It is one of the angles in my unit circle. Okay, so same thing here. I'm just, the whole process is the same except there's a negative, so I'm just going to write it. All right, so then now we have 3 sets of angles to solve. Sine is equal to 0. Sine is equal to square root 2 over 2. Sine is equal to negative square root 2 over 2. Okay, so go ahead and figure out what all those angles are. The answers are 0, pi, pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. 2 from each equation. 0, pi. Both of them are going to give sine 0. Oh yeah, you forgot the other one. All right, we're going to really quickly go on to 14.3. We're probably only going to get to the first part and then not do the word problems for now. Okay, 14.3 is all about SOHCAHTOA, so you got to remember your SOHCAHTOA from before. All right, let's talk about SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA only applies to right triangles. Okay, so let's say that we have this angle here on this side. Then what is this side relative to this angle? What is this side that's I'm pointing here? Oh, not adjacent. Adjacent means next to. Huh? Opposite. Okay, so then we're going to say this is O. Okay, what about this side on the bottom? That is adjacent. Okay, what about this third side that's opposite of the right angle? Hypotenuse. Why is hypotenuse not adjacent? It is right next to, right? It is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse can only be hypotenuse. Hypotenuse, by definition, are 2. Do you know what makes a hypotenuse hypotenuse? Opposite of right angle, so that has to be hypotenuse. What's the second thing? The longest side. Okay, so opposite or the longest side. That has to be hypotenuse, cannot be anything else. Okay, so sine is what side over what side? So, SOHCAHTOA. Huh? Opposite over hypotenuse. So that's why you get a so. Sine, and then O is opposite, H is hypotenuse. How about cosine? Adjacent over hypotenuse, and then TOA, opposite over adjacent. Okay, this only works on right triangles. If we're going to go to non-right triangles, this will not work. All right. Okay, so let's solve a problem. Find a standard position angle. Standard position angle just means everything starts at 0. determined by the point 8, negative 6. What are the values of the 6 trig functions? All right. First, you draw the point 8, negative 6. Where is 8, negative 6? Which quadrant? Fourth. Okay, so 8, negative 6. Oh, I'm sorry. 8, negative 6 is right here. Okay, what you do is you draw a straight line back to the origin, and you draw a straight line up to the x-axis so that you create a right triangle. All right, next. How long is this x side? 8. Because it tells me I have to go 8 here and then 6 down, right? So this is 8. What about this length? 6. Let's put positive 6 instead of negative 6. It is a length. Where are the 6 trig functions? So 6 trig function means sine, cosine, tangent, and all their reciprocal. Well, it depends on what angle we're talking about. We are always talking about the angle that's closest to the origin. Okay? Actually, in this case, let's put negative 6, so then we don't have to do extra work. All right, let's do sine first. Sine is what side over what side? Opposite over hypotenuse. So from this angle, opposite over, oh no, I don't have a hypotenuse. What should I do? Yes, Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we gotta go and find the hypotenuse using right triangle. Or do you guys know, do you have this memorized? It's a very special right triangle. 10. It's the 3, 4, 5 triangle, but doubled. Okay, 3, 4, 5 is a special right triangle. You have to just memorize that. Oh, okay, opposites over hypotenuse. And then you just go ahead and find all the other ratios. Okay, I'm gonna have to change your homework again. Okay, it's like a battle game through chapter 14.